This is a lot of Castlevania games, bro. Where are we gonna begin?
Let's just start with the games Simon's in. Take all the other games that he's not in and put it on Dracula's side of the table.
Alright.
No. This one goes over here.
Why? You said all the ones with, that Simon's not in on the Dracula side
Yes,
of the table.
Simon's in this game.
What?
Yeah, he's in this game.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
Who's that?
You're looking at him. That's Simon.
What?
When we were growing up in the 80s, the heroes that we saw portrayed in television and in film were very manly and resolute characters. They were capable of engaging any task or enemy head on, with no fear at all. Kids and teenagers wanted to emulate these heroes and do the things that they did.
Video game characters weren't an exception to this, though.
Not at all.
Among our favorites growing up as kids was Castlevania's Simon Belmont, the assassin of evil, the vanquisher of vampires. When I think of Simon Belmont, as I'm sure you do, this is what comes to mind.
The original Castlevania was presented in a limited sense as a movie. That's why there's a lot of enemies within the game that don't really fit into Transylvanian lore. With this movie motif, so to say, you can see elements of characters such as Conan the Barbarian and Indiana Jones, which are woven into Simon's classic look.
Yeah, he was gritty, had a powerful physique, and was courageous, and that was all visually apparent to us in all of the original game's illustrations. Over the years, though, Simon went through some changes that diminished his once righteous, strong look.
Historically, it all started on September of 1986, when the game first released in Japan. But for us, it started in May of 1987, when the game was officially released in the US. We were caught by surprise at how fun and difficult this game was, and always felt Simon visually fit into his world. When Part 2 came out a year later, we were introduced to an armored, knightly version of Simon, but we still felt that he was visually heroic. Around the time of the game's release, the change in his appearance is never fully explained. Other articles would explain in greater detail that Simon's body was decaying from the injury he received in his first encounter with Dracula. We believe that this was the reason for the armor. Promotional material for the game showed more alterations to Simon's look. The most notable was the cover of the October 1988 issue of Nintendo Power, which portrays Simon in a full helmet and cloak, neither of which were present in Simon's quest. This graphic depiction of Simon beheading Dracula was the cause of some controversy, as Nintendo found themselves receiving angry letters from parents that claimed that the cover gave their children nightmares. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning, as a true nightmare would follow. In 1989, we were excited to hear about a Saturday morning cartoon titled Captain N, the Game Master, which promised to showcase some of our favorite NES game characters. Among them was Simon Belmont.
We were extremely disappointed to discover that he neither looked nor acted like the Simon we had come to know.
Nah.
To add insult to injury, he had no redeeming qualities in his personality either. He was pompous, vain, conceited, petty, jealous, and cowardly. Despite this, we still watched the show, since it was a cartoon about video games. It was pretty clear, though, that DiC, the creators of the show, either didn't reference the source material or just chose to ignore it altogether and made him as they saw fit. Fortunately, in 1991, with the release of Super Castlevania 4, Simon returned as the powerful slayer of the undead, much to ours and fans' enjoyment alike. This armored gladiator version of Simon would be a constant for the next 10 years.
Throughout the course of the 90s, systems and graphics brought more color and detail to character design. Many popular games fashioned their heroes and worlds to look and feel like an anime movie or series. Protagonists were usually portrayed by prepubescent boys or teenagers that were tasked with saving their world. This type of design favored males with slender physiques, little to no facial hair, and in some cases, long, feminine-like hair. This was not necessarily a bad thing. Exploring different character configurations and hero types are good and can bring about memorable characters or great stories within games. Final Fantasy VII and Symphony of the Night were two prime examples of this type of character design. Released in 1997, the two shared many similarities. They were both continuations of two established and very popular franchises. They both caught mainstream attention, sold millions of units worldwide, finding homes with many gamers and introducing others who were not familiar with either franchise or genre for that matter. These games were milestones in each of their respective series, and their character designs would be revisited and reused and reapplied. To this day, actually. The design of heroes shifted from large, imposing, and gruff to soft, delicate, and androgynous facial features. The latter began to populate the rosters of the Castlevania universe. Please don't misinterpret. Some of these guys needed an update. And Ayami Kojima is a talented, self-taught artist who arguably managed to bring visual allure to some of the cliché movie-inspired character designs. However, though some aspects of the series and characters needed an update, not all of them required it, especially Simon.
There are many characters in games, comics, and other forms of media that are defined by their personalities and their stories. These characters can be radically reimagined and redesigned. They're not defined specifically by the way that they look. Other characters, however, are the opposite and have distinguishing features that make them who they are.
In 2001, 8 years after the Japanese Sharp X68000 version, Konami released Castlevania Chronicles in the US for the PS1. This port contained the original version and an arrange mode which featured new cutscenes, cleaner visuals, and a new Ayami Kojima-inspired sprite for Simon. This new design boasted the effeminate qualities of the post-Symphony of the Night character design, but in our opinion this went a little overboard. Simon's hair color was the least of our concerns. In this makeover, his imposing physique is gone, so is his battle-hardened stare. His fur-lined armor is replaced by what looks like stylish faux fur, and even his massive skull-crushing boots are replaced by goth-inspired go-go boots.
This artistic rendition of our beloved hero does not convince me that he is physically capable of taking on the hordes of Dracula's castle single-handedly. Summed up, this redesign does nothing for Simon. Period.
I would love to say that this would be the last time that Simon's image would be deformed by unrestricted artistic interpretation. But sadly, it isn't.
In November 2008, for the first time ever in the franchise's history, a fighting game was created, and it featured many fan favorites, such as Trevor, Alucard, and even Grant. Among them taking center stage was an odd and out-of-place gothic metal fashioned Simon. This time, however, the blame for this awful representation of the series veteran was not made by Kojima, but by Takeshi Obata, who's best known for his artwork in Death Note. To be fair, this character design actually would have been interesting had it been made for another character or another game altogether. Konami, however, allowed Obata's concept of Simon to make it into the game's final production. Though not as feminine or as fragile as Kojima's take on Simon, this design is all over the place, and again, places visual characteristics on him that don't belong. Simon looks like he's ready to walk the runway at a goth fashion show.
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
Simon even has flames tattooed on his hips coming up from his battle shorts. If the attempt was to make him look attractive, edgy, or sexual in some way, the message was lost. This sends a mixed message of disrespect to the fans and lessens the image of established characters of the franchise.
The appeal of the action-adventure game is that it transports you to a world that's totally unlike your own and gets you out of the daily grind. A game can have great graphics or an amazing story, even new technology. But if a game lacks a visually striking hero, then it leaves the experience incomplete.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
This story does, however, end in a more positive light. On March 5, 2013, Konami released a follow-up to the successful Lords of Shadow, a 3DS title called Mirror of Fate. Among the characters in this game's story was none other than Simon Belmont. We were able to see what Hideo Kojima and company did to bring back, in a manner of sorts, the hero that introduced us to the franchise. The story of Lords of Shadow takes place in an alternate timeline, and things are quite different than the original canon of the Castlevania universe. Hence, many notable changes are made to Simon's appearance. In this title, gone is the delicate nature of Ayami Kojima's vision. In his place, we have a grizzled and scarred hero. From a gladiator appearance, he's now much more barbaric and clad in armor. He also sports a fur cloak and a full beard. His change in origin also brings with it a change in his demeanor and ornaments. Since raised by mountain people, Simon's main armor has a wooden face, similar to Baba Yaga's from Lords of Shadow. And he wields the Beast Killer, not the Vampire Killer. In the original game, Simon is 22 years old. However, this incarnation of Simon is a venerable 36. He's feral, prone to fits of anger, and has an overwhelming hatred for Dracula. Originally, he is groomed to face Dracula as a rite of passage, whereas his motivation in Mirror of Fate is simply revenge. Why is this reimagining of Simon so drastically different? Or was there an effort by the developer to overcompensate from previous Rocky Horror iterations of Simon? This may not be everything we hoped for when they announced Mirror of Fate, but we are happy to see Simon resemble the hero we once celebrated.